Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you worked for, every dollar you earned, every empire you built, still could not protect you from the one thing every human being must face. Death does not negotiate. It does not care how powerful you are or how many companies carry your name. In the first 15 seconds of realizing that truth, some people accept it and continue living their lives. But for one billionaire, that realization landed like a quiet thunderstorm in his mind, changing the way he looked at every minute of his life. He had the jets, the estates, the influence that could move markets and shape industries. Yet he felt something slipping away every day. Time. Not the kind measured by watches or calendars, but the kind measured in heartbeats and birthdays. And once that thought entered his mind, he began asking a question that would cost him hundreds of millions of dollars to pursue. What if death was simply a problem waiting to be solved? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Daniel Mercer grew up in a modest town tucked somewhere between long highways and quiet neighborhoods in the United States, the kind of place where most people lived predictable lives and where success was usually measured by stability rather than ambition. His father worked as a mechanic for most of his life, fixing engines and returning home each evening with grease still caught in the lines of his hands. His mother balanced two jobs, determined to make sure the lights stayed on and the bills were paid. From the outside, Daniel's childhood looked ordinary, but there was something about him that separated him from the other children around him. While others spent their afternoons chasing bicycles down dusty streets, Daniel spent hours taking apart small electronics just to understand how they worked. Radios, broken computers, old calculators he found at yard sales. He believed that if something existed, it could be understood, and if it could be understood, it could be improved. That mindset quietly shaped the person he would become. By the time Daniel reached college, the technology world was beginning to explode with opportunity. Startups were forming everywhere, and young entrepreneurs were discovering that a small team with the right idea could challenge companies that had existed for decades. Daniel noticed something that many people overlooked. Businesses everywhere were struggling to organize and analyze their data. Companies were collecting information faster than they could understand it, and the tools available at the time were slow and inefficient. So he began building a software system that could process massive amounts of information and turn it into clear, usable insights. It was the kind of tool that business leaders immediately recognized as valuable. Investors noticed. Venture capital firms reached out, and within just a few years, Daniel Mercer found himself leading a company that was growing faster than he ever imagined possible. Success arrived quickly, almost faster than he could fully process. Offices expanded, employees multiplied, and his software became the backbone of operations for major corporations. Industry magazines began describing him as one of the brightest innovators of his generation. When a global technology conglomerate eventually offered to acquire his company for several $billion, Daniel accepted the deal with a calm expression that surprised even the executives sitting across the table from him. Overnight, his net worth placed him among the youngest billionaires in the country. News outlets ran headlines celebrating his achievement. Business conferences invited him to speak. For many people, that moment would have felt like the finish line of a lifelong race. For Daniel Mercer, it felt like the beginning of a new question. For the first few years after the sale, Daniel experienced the lifestyle that many people imagine when they hear the word billionaire. He purchased homes in cities known for their skyline views and quiet luxury. A sleek private jet allowed him to travel anywhere in the world within hours. Invitations arrived constantly, from elite business gatherings to exclusive events attended by celebrities and political figures. Yet the excitement of those experiences slowly began to fade. The thrill of success, it turned out, had an expiration date. Daniel began spending more time thinking about the future than enjoying the present. He studied emerging technologies, new scientific discoveries, and the breakthroughs that were shaping medicine. Somewhere in that process, a quiet concern started growing in his mind. The moment that concern became impossible to ignore arrived during what should have been a routine medical appointment. Daniel had scheduled a full health examination at a private clinic used by some of the wealthiest individuals in the country. The doctors ran their tests, scanned his organs, analyzed his blood, and eventually returned with reassuring results. His health was strong. His body was functioning well. But one comment from the physician stayed with him long after he left the clinic. The doctor explained that, despite his excellent health, his body was still aging in the same way every human body does. Cells gradually weaken, organs slowly lose efficiency, and time continues moving forward. The statement was medically accurate and entirely ordinary. Yet for Daniel Mercer, it opened a door he had never truly looked through before. For most people, aging is accepted as a natural part of life. Birthdays arrive, years pass, and the process unfolds quietly. But Daniel had spent his entire career solving problems through technology. When he encountered an obstacle, his instinct was to analyze it and search for a solution. The idea that human aging might simply be accepted without resistance felt strange to him. Science had already transformed transportation, communication, and information. Medical research had eradicated diseases that once terrified entire civilizations. If those challenges could be overcome, why should aging be considered untouchable? That question began occupying more of his attention than any business project ever had. Daniel started reading research papers written by scientists studying longevity and cellular biology. He learned about structures inside human cells known as telomeres, tiny protective caps at the ends of DNA strands that gradually shorten as the body ages. Some researchers believe that slowing this shortening process might extend the healthy lifespan of cells. Other scientists were studying regenerative medicine, exploring whether damaged tissues could be repaired or replaced using stem cells. There were also experiments examining how genetics, diet, and environmental factors influence the aging process. The deeper Daniel looked into these fields, the more he realized that humanity was standing at the edge of discoveries that might change the way people experience aging. What began as curiosity slowly transformed into commitment. Daniel Mercer decided he would fund research designed to explore the limits of human longevity. At first, the investment seemed modest compared to his overall wealth. He donated money to universities conducting medical studies and supported laboratories researching cellular regeneration. But as he met with scientists and listened to their ideas, the scale of his involvement expanded. He realized that many promising projects struggled to secure consistent funding. Research required expensive equipment, specialized teams, and years of patience before meaningful results appeared. Daniel believed that if enough resources were concentrated on the problem, progress might accelerate dramatically. Within a few years, he had quietly invested hundreds of millions of dollars into longevity science. One of his properties was transformed into a secure research facility where teams of scientists could collaborate without the usual limitations faced by academic laboratories. Geneticists, biologists, and medical engineers joined the project, drawn by the opportunity to explore ideas that traditional funding sources often avoided. Daniel did not simply sign checks and disappear. He attended meetings, asked questions, and studied the data produced by the research teams. The project was no longer just an intellectual interest. It had become deeply personal. As the experiments continued, Daniel also began applying many of the findings to his own daily routine. His schedule was carefully structured around health monitoring and biological optimization. Doctors tracked his sleep patterns, metabolic activity, and cardiovascular performance. Nutritionists designed meals intended to support cellular repair and reduce inflammation. Physical trainers focused on exercises believed to preserve muscle and bone strength as the body ages. In some cases, experimental treatments were considered under strict medical supervision. Daniel approached these efforts with the same disciplined mindset that once drove his technology company toward success. Outside the walls of the research facility, however, the world was beginning to notice the scale of his project. Journalists discovered financial records showing large investments in biotechnology startups connected to longevity research. Articles began appearing in major publications, describing Daniel Mercer as a billionaire determined to challenge the limits of human lifespan. Some scientists welcomed the attention, explaining that private investment could accelerate discoveries that might benefit millions of people. Others expressed caution, emphasizing that biological processes are extraordinarily complex and that progress in medicine rarely follows a straight path. The public conversation surrounding Daniel's work continued growing, and opinions remained divided. Admirers described him as someone willing to invest his fortune in a goal that could reshape the future of healthcare. Critics wondered whether the pursuit of extreme longevity might create social and ethical challenges. Daniel himself rarely responded to these discussions. Instead, he remained focused on the research unfolding inside his laboratories. For him, the question had never been about headlines or public approval. It had always been about understanding whether time itself could be influenced by human ingenuity. Years passed, experiments advanced, and the data collected by his research teams expanded into thousands of pages of analysis. Some findings were encouraging, showing that certain interventions might slow aspects of cellular aging in controlled conditions. Other experiments revealed how delicate and interconnected the human body truly is. Every biological system interacts with countless others, forming a network that scientists are still learning to fully understand. The deeper the researchers looked, the clearer it became that extending life was not simply a matter of adjusting one variable. It required unraveling one of the most intricate systems nature has ever produced. Eventually, during a meeting that brought together several of his lead researchers, a quiet but important realization emerged. One of the senior scientists explained that although progress in longevity science was advancing steadily, completely stopping aging might remain beyond humanity's reach for a very long time. Human life could likely be extended, health in later years improved, and diseases delayed. But the dream of absolute immortality, the idea of living forever without biological limits, was far more complicated than even the most optimistic projections suggested. Daniel Mercer listened carefully as the explanation unfolded. The room remained silent for several seconds after the scientist finished speaking. No one present doubted the sincerity of the research teams or the importance of the work they were doing. But the conversation forced Daniel to confront the possibility that the answer he had been searching for might never appear in the form he originally imagined. After dedicating years and immense resources to the pursuit of extended life, he was now facing the same question that confronts every human being sooner or later. What matters most when time cannot be controlled? The experiments continued, the research did not stop, and the laboratories remained active. But Daniel Mercer began approaching the project with a slightly different perspective. He understood that the discoveries emerging from longevity science could still transform medicine and help countless people live healthier lives. At the same time, he began reflecting on the years he had spent chasing the idea of limitless time. In doing so, he arrived at a realization that felt both simple and profound. Money can open doors that remain closed to most people. It can create opportunities, fund discoveries, and build institutions capable of changing the world. Yet even the greatest fortunes cannot pause the steady movement of time. Each day still contains only 24 hours. Each life still unfolds one moment after another. And perhaps that is exactly what makes those moments meaningful. So now we turn the question to you. If you possessed unlimited wealth and access to the most advanced science on the planet, would you dedicate your life to searching for immortality, or would you spend your time in a completely different way? Let us know in the comments where you are watching from, and if stories exploring wealth, ambition, and the mysteries of human progress interest you. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next journey we share together.